Well, good morning, folks. Thanks for joining our Tech Talk on this beautiful April Fool's Day. But I promise you, we will be truthful today. Trust me on that. It's a bright, pretty cool day in Louisiana, but I think we've got some hot information from you and a great topic on something called SASE, or Secure Access Services Edge. And our presenter today is our very own Transformyx Technical Sales Architect, Ron Timmons. Ron brings a wealth of knowledge to the networking and security realm. And today we're going to turn it over to him to tell us all about SASE. I do ask that you mute your phones. And if you do have a question, feel free to unmute and shout out the question. Or if you'd like to put it in the chat window, feel free to do that. We will be recording this. We're recording it now. After the call, we will be sending out the recording link. So feel free to pass the recording link to others in your organization who couldn't join the call. I do ask that if you have some topics that you think might be of value to yourselves and others on the call or other calls, please feel free to let us know what topics are of interest to you. So that helps us structure the various calls going forward and make sure we've got content that is relevant to you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ron Timmons. Take it away, Ron.
All right, thanks, Pat. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know. So I'll give myself, the quick introduction here. Make sure I get all these windows out of the way and all these other good things. So hopefully you know who Transformyx is. We can skip over these slides here. And what we do, because you're on the call and you clicked on the invite. So as Pat said, I'm one of the technology sales architects at Transformyx. I've been here for about 3 years. And for the 17 years prior to that, I was in education here in Louisiana. And yeah, that's pretty much me. Same job for 17 years, and now I'm over with Transformyx, and I was actually one of Pat's customers. So, it's one of those close families. We all seem to know each other. So I always like to start with this slide. I think this slide belongs in like every presentation that I ever give. I found this for the last one that I gave on cybersecurity, right? Knowing what you don't know, right? We're changing our business practices and our business flows, and the vendors are all throwing new acronyms at us every day, right? So there will be a lot of alphabet soup in this presentation. Maybe some terms you've heard, maybe some buzzwords here and there, but hopefully, by the end of it, you'll have a, what we like to call that, 10,000 foot view of what SASE is, how it applies, what components of it you have, what components you don't have, and what the big picture is. So maybe at the end of a quick 30 minutes, we'll be at the trust me, it's complicated if I did this right. So first thing I'm gonna start off is the slide from Gartner about SASE and where it falls, right? Secure Access Service Edge, kind of, Pat led into that, right? I'll get into it a little bit more on some other slides, but we just got to think about the services we're consuming and the way we consume them and how we're consuming them, right? That's what this is all about. The same Gartner article I pulled this slide from was actually posted in 2019, and here we are in 2021, and this is really the first time we're having a conversation about SASE with anybody and what it is, right? I can say that in 2018 was probably one of the first times I had an SD-WAN conversation, and now everybody's adopting SD-WAN. So I think it's taken off a little slower than Gartner anticipated, but we'll give you a high-level review, and you can follow up with any questions. First off, what is it? It's like Pat said, secure access at the service edge, pronounced SASE. Right, here's a little blurb and a hyperlink to Gartner, right? I just kind of quoted the link on them, right? our network and services and where we're delivering those services, whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, as a service, colo, that's all changing, right? We were kind of moving to those remote branch, to those SD-WAN services in 2020, late 2019, early 2020. And then COVID hit, and our service edge and our security perimeter just got bigger because of the whole workforce deal, right? So how do you implement SASE? I wish there was just here you go, here's your SASE package and call it done. But the reality is you have to implement it with a collection of tools based on your needs and your requirements, right? It's not a one size fits all, and it encompasses a lot of different components. So if we look at, the historic shift of how we did things, right? We had our remote workforce using VPN to get back to our data center. We had our branch offices use MPLS to get back to our data center. We housed everything, and we all sat behind this, nice data center with our big firewalls, and most of it was internal, right? I mean, this is the way we've been doing it for the past 15 years. And then we started to see a little bit of a shift, right? We started using software as a service, infrastructure as a service, private cloud, more web-based services, right? And everybody started running through that data center pipe, right? We needed bigger firewalls, we needed different internet connections. We had a lot of different tools and a lot of different services, and this is where things started to shift. And then we take a look at where we're at today, right? Now we're using, SD-WAN and direct internet access at our remote branches. We still have our brick and mortar with our firewall. And thanks to this lovely COVID virus, we've got all these roaming agents, right? And our services are everywhere, and our security perimeter just got much bigger, right? You may have stuff in different cloud providers. You may have stuff just being provided to you as a service, and you're providing that direct internet access and not making them go through your headquarters. So this is kind of where we're at today, and what that means is we now have to protect all these things hosted in the cloud. We've got to protect our remote branches. We still have to protect our brick and mortar data centers, and we've got to protect our roaming clients. And that's what SASE is all about, right? The service edge of where we're providing services and how our users are accessing those services. All right. So SASE does start with security, right? Traditional network security, wireless encryption, segmentation, software defined, ACLs, all that good stuff. But now we're looking at secure web gateways. We're looking at cloud access security brokers for your cloud services. We're looking at our firewalls. We're looking at our DNS securities, right? Before we just had firewalls with our IPS and IDS, and now we're throwing on file inspection and malware encryption. Maybe we're throwing on URL content, right? So it's still there, and we do need visibility into our traffic. We still have policies, and we got to integrate all these lovely services. But now we've got to look at our connectivity, right? We have our SD-WAN, we have our remote branches, and we have all of our remote access workers, right? So how are we protecting these guys? And then multiple forms of security, right? Are we using secure web gateways? Are we using cloud delivered firewalls? Are we using the cloud access brokers? Are we performing DNS security? Remote browser isolation, that one was kind of already on here. I haven't seen a whole lot of people implement that. Data loss prevention, DLP, right? That's a big topic. You got to protect your corporate assets. And, before they may have just been on your file server, and now they can be anywhere, right? Depending on which services you're using. We all know malware is big, right? Everybody's getting ransomware left and right these days, it seems. Another person's fallen victim with another exploit. And then, sandboxing different components that come into our network, right? If it's a new file and we've never seen it before, do we want to sandbox it before we let a user access it? And then everything's moved to SSL, so we need to decrypt that traffic, hopefully selectively and more efficiently. But it's all parts and pieces of SASE, right? And then the last part is, how do we identify and how do we enforce zero trust? And we've got to worry about, are we identifying our users? Are we using two-factor? Are we using two-factor across all of our systems, right? Are we using segmentation? Are we using SAML authentication, to do all these single sign-ons and providing one integration, right? We try to make it easy for everybody and turn on these single sign-ons, but are we truly identifying the user and the device with profiling and posturing at the device level to make sure that it has antivirus, that it's a trusted device? Excuse me. And then do you have any application specific policies? Do you have any user-based or activity-based things that will automatically block a device if it detects anomalous behaviors, right? And just different integrations. And are we continuously verifying the user's identity and the machine identities? So, if we go back to that first slide, right, with the nice little trio here. There we go. We're kind of looking at all of these points, right? Are we securing the connections? Are we securing the identity? Are we securing our network like we normally do? So I wish I could tell you that there's like, hey, just sign up for the SASE subscription or the SASE package, and here you go, you're going to be protected. But if you look at this slide here's where we get in the alphabet soup, right? Look at all the different services that we use. Look at where the services live. Look at how we're accessing them, right? And look at all these pieces, right? Are we implementing, route prioritization, threat protection, geo restrictions? Are we doing app discovery, right? Shadow IT. What are our users running that we're not aware of, right? Are we looking at the behavior analytics? Are we protecting at a DNS? So all of these pieces all have different products, all from different vendors. And, I would say over the last 2 years that we've seen more vendor acquisitions and vendor portfolios expand as they acquire different components and try to offer you a holistic solution, that kind of solves all these things. And, there's a couple of them out there that have some pretty comprehensive packages. And there's some that don't, right, that are going to rely on third-party packages. And if you look at this kind of wheel as a whole, you may realize that you've got some of this with different vendors, but you may also realize that, there's some holes in here. So that's what this conversation's about, right? Is what am I doing? Where's my footprint? Where's my threat? And how do I protect it, right? How do I protect my data as a company? How do I protect my users and their devices? That really, in a nutshell, is what SASE is all about, is protecting the access no matter where it lives. And unfortunately, it lives everywhere today. And we got to figure out which set of tools we're going to use to protect it. We got to figure out how we're going to implement that zero trust on the devices and the users. And that's what it's all about. So I did pull together a couple different examples. Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment here. So one of your initial comments here was very compelling. The fact that the traffic is changed. You know, before it was 80% to your data center and 20% to the internet. Now it's been flipped on its head. And most of the traffic needs to go out to SaaS, SaaS applications or AWS or Azure or something like that. And also the fact that, well, it's not,
or do you know?
let's see, I think we got to mute someone here.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me mute someone here. Hold on just a second.
I'm pinging 250. That's the DC.
Let's see. Okay, I just muted someone. So so between the fact that it's no longer just branches that are connecting in, it's also a lot of remote users, particularly with COVID, and the fact that the traffic is been flipped on its head, most to the internet. That presents that very large attack surface. And have you ever asked yourself over the last few years, because this has been around for a few years, man, wouldn't it be nice if we could just send all that traffic directly from those end users who are working remotely or from those branches directly out to those SaaS applications and directly to Azure and AWS where we've got workloads such that we can ensure a better user experience as opposed to routing it all through the core data center? Have you ever asked about that? And you probably have, and you've probably asked, can I continue to do this where I'm constantly having to scale up the, say the perimeter internet connection because everything is being funneled through that? And are my users happy because everything's coming to the data center when in fact they could go directly to these applications and have a much nicer user experience? You've probably asked yourself that, but you've also probably been extremely concerned because once you allow them to go directly to these applications, you've opened your attack surface up enormously. You go from theoretically one attack surface, the core data center internet connection, to perhaps hundreds, if not thousands of them. One of the things that I think is making this SASE subject come to the forefront and be so important nowadays is that not only has the traffic patterns changed and the users, there's so many remote users and folks wanting to go directly to it, but also that there's a recognition that we have to develop tools and automation and orchestration to allow you to let these folks go directly to those internet applications, but in a secure fashion. We have to provide orchestration capabilities to make it an easy lift or an easier lift than it is now. Because if you tried to do this, say 5 years ago, and let your folks go directly to the internet, the cost and time and expertise and money to make this happen, it would be literally unbearable. But now what you're starting to see, and this is a journey, is that we're starting to see vendors come up with orchestrated ways to deliver these secure perimeters, either at the remote user's house, at the coffee shop or at the branches. So in my opinion, those are some of the compelling reasons why now we're having this discussion as opposed to having this discussion 5 years ago. It'd be interesting in hearing some of your thoughts, as our customers. Have these things crossed your minds over the last few years? So I'll go ahead and be quiet there, Ron. Just want to interject there.
No, Pat, interject, right? I don't want to just PowerPoint by death, right? I want interaction, feedback, and I think you made a great, summation, right? Because what were we doing? We were doing, full tunnel VPN and still hauling it back to the data center, right? And that's when the advent of, SD-WAN not only providing us cheaper and secure connectivity, but also that ability to do the direct internet offload, right? And then we were at the SD-WAN, and then COVID hit, and now we're everywhere, right? And that's what it's all about, right? How do we protect it? How do we protect it everywhere? Because that edge is everywhere. Our applications are everywhere, and our users that are accessing it are everywhere. Now, this one, I was fortunate enough to pull up two different vendors' slides, but don't think that I'm trying to be vendor agnostic, but just kind of provide you some examples of what actual products fit into the SASE portfolio. So I do have two different vendor examples here. It's by no means a comprehensive example, but I just wanted to be able to put like some actual product to, you know, these different components so you could see what we're looking at, right? So yeah, you know, we've got our AnyConnect VPN client. We've got Umbrella for DNS security. We've got 2 flavors of SD-WAN, you know, on the Cisco side with Viptela and Meraki. We've got our firewalls with malware prevention, with sandboxing, and all of that. You know, that covers, you know, that covers a good little bit of it, right? But how do we do zero trust? You know, this Duo one, this is another one of those ones that is an acquisition, right? Duo wasn't a Cisco product. Over the past couple years, it became one, right? Because they're trying, you know, all the vendors are trying to pull more products into their portfolio to give you this this full package, right? And then, you know, workload, right? Things like StealthWatch Cloud that watch the traffic, and Tetration that you know locks down the communications between your servers, right? So they're all out there, and you may have a part of it, you may have a piece of it, but I just really wanted to help you be able to visualize it. So, you know, let's take a look here. Let's look at here's Palo's version of what SASE is comprised of, right? We've got our SD-WAN, we've got our VPN, we've got our zero trust, quality of service, right? Because back to what Pat said, right? The reason we're doing this is to provide that better user experience and not do the backhaul like we're doing, right? So that better quality of service. Palo DNS security, firewall as a service, endpoint threat protection, secure web gateway, data loss, and CASB, right? Can I take a quick poll? Pat, you want to look at the chat window? How many people use a CASB service or even know what CASB does? We get a little feedback?
Yeah, there are no questions in the chat window, but I like your CASB question. Yeah, that might be worth spending a couple of minutes on what CASB is.
All right. Well, Pat, why don't you give me your interpretation here of what CASB is?
Okay. Well, it stands for Cloud Access Service Broker, I believe, as I remember. In the idea, not in terms of how it's implemented, because different CASB solutions implement their solution in different ways, but the concept is the idea of you've got folks going out to various cloud services, and you, as say the CIO, have an idea of what cloud services you're using, but it's quite possible that you are way off. And so a CASB, one of the things a CASB can do, depending on the implementation, can be used to let you know, here is where all of your users are going. You thought you were going to about 20 or 30 different websites or cloud services. Guess what? We found out they're going to over 500. When I was at Cisco, we actually had this. Cisco IT made a guess as to the quantity of various cloud services that the Cisco employees were going to, and they were way off base. They had a third-party CASB company use a CASB solution, and they found out, I think they were off by at least 50 to 100%. Now, another way that the CASBs can be helpful, particularly if they do things like what's called API integration, is they could say, you can tie it into, say, your AD, such that you've got your users going off to, say, ServiceNow, or maybe your Salesforce.com or something like that. With an API integration, they can do things and allow you to know that, hey, Bob Smith within your organization just went to Salesforce.com, and oh, by the way, he tried to download a document that maybe had some DLP data in it. Maybe we don't want to do that. So it's the idea that making you aware of who in your organization is accessing different cloud services. Ron, am I off base there? What do you think?
No, you're on par. The only thing that I would add to that is, with those API integrations, right? It was easy in our brick and mortar data center to look at security logs and look at who authenticated and their device, right? Now, how do you know that Bob Smith just did a login to, let's say, Office 365? Okay, and he did that from Louisiana. And then at 4 a.m., Bob Smith just logged into Office 365 from India. Well, you don't, right? So think about that. Think about, okay, these offerings are in the cloud, and I'm making them available to anybody. And if we jump back a couple slides here, right? One of the things that was on here was geo restrictions, right? You need to be able to lock down those applications, right? Because you don't, without a CASB, you don't have visibility to who's accessing those services and what they're accessing in those services and where they're accessing it from, right? So that kind of covers, it covers your app discovery, it covers your geo restrictions, it covers your threat protection, right? So really, what I wish I had, and if you think about it, you could almost take this wheel here, maybe rearrange a little bit of it and put it in pie slices, and then translate it back into this of, where does that fit? What product or what service or what solution covers that area that's been identified, right? So um, that really, in a nutshell, is what SASE is all about. Now, I do have some additional resources, and I wasn't sure if we were going to get into them or not, but I do want to show you some example workflows, and I do want to throw Tom, my counterpart in New Orleans, Pat, myself, into the mix here, and offer you guys to reach out to us, because we have some tools at our disposal to help you identify where your workloads live and where your protections are, and where you may have gaps in visibility, or gaps in your coverage, right? So if we just look at this workflow with our employee, to an application, where are we protecting, and what products are we using to protect them with, right? So this, and just kind of going through this workflow, will actually help you kind of identify, where you may have more security exposure, and where you may have some gaps, right? And I've got several different examples of them, right? Here's your on-site employee to the internet. Um, here's your guest access, right? So, feel free to reach out to any of us, whether it's your account manager or your pre-sales engineer, and we'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you, and to go through these different workflows and figure out where you may have some vulnerabilities. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there,
It would,
as well.
one thing I'd like to add, Ron, and we kind of mentioned it, is that as I've looked at SASE over the last, I guess, about 8 months, is that as I stated before, I see it as a journey that there are lots of vendors providing SASE solutions. I'm seeing that some are further along that journey than others. And if you can use sort of the Gartner category that they instantiated about a year or two ago as sort of the baseline, you need to provide these services. But I see it as a journey, and what I do see is my expectations that the maturity of this market in terms of what the vendors are going to be able to provide to you in terms of a holistic, secure platform for you, either for your remote users or for your branches to go straight to the cloud. That maturity is happening, I guess, on a monthly basis. They're rolling out more and more features for you, and as a part of that, the lift for you as an IT person is getting easier. It's getting easier and easier to make this happen because, as I see it, one of the primary reasons we haven't done this over, say, the last 5 years with none of my customers is that it's difficult and it's scary to say, we're going to turn you loose. We're not going to make sure that you come through our data center and go out through the perimeter firewall. We want to let you go straight to the internet. And in the feeling that we can't adequately protect you in the organization without a lot of money, a lot of effort, that's changing. So that's why I say it's a journey. And I would, keep listening to what's happening in the SASE field because it's very exciting.
Yeah, and that leads to, what I mentioned earlier, right? We're seeing a lot of different product acquisitions, right, of the major players like Zscaler, like Cisco, like Palo, trying to pull in more products and give you a more, robust feature set, with that consolidated, that overused pane of glass that we like, versus all these disparate products. So, I definitely agree with Pat that it is a journey and it's still not at its maturity, but don't feel like you're fully vulnerable or fully exposed, because if you go back and you look at all these different products that make this up, right? You can be using different vendors for all of these things and still be checking the boxes, right? I could be using Umbrella here, but I could be using ClearPass here, right? I mean, it's a very, very open market, and there's a lot of products out there, that do these things, right? I don't have to be using Duo. I could be using Okta. I could be using, different two-factor authentications to identify my users, right? So just think about it, like I said, holistically, and we'll have the recording. If you want a copy of the slide deck, for reference sake or for workflow, or if you want Pat and I or Tom, or if you want to schedule something with your account manager saying, hey, yeah, let me look at this workflow and let me identify where I may not have protection. That's what we're here for, right? That's our sole function. So I'm gonna kind of leave it at that, and I guess I'll open it up to Q&A and see if anybody has any questions of anything that I covered.
Yeah, folks, please shout out any questions that you may have, or feel free to put them in the chat window. Great information, Ron. One thing I would add is stay tuned for our next Tech Talk. We're still looking at the topic we're going to present on that, but we certainly invite your feedback on topics that you think would be of interest. One of the things I'd like to mention is for those of you who knew me when I was at Cisco, I used to teach a 2-day basic networking class, sort of a fundamentals of Ethernet switching and IP routing, which, by the way, have not changed in 30 years. Even though networking has become virtual and quite often it's cloud-based, Ethernet is still Ethernet, routing is still routing. So we are resurrecting that 2-day basic networking class here at Transformyx, free of charge. And if you've got some what I would call entry-level engineers, or perhaps a very junior engineer that you'd like to send to the class, please let us know, and we can put them on our list of possible students. We'll be conducting these classes probably at the very earliest. We probably won't start until late April due to COVID. We want people to be comfortable because it is an in-person class. But if you do have some folks, let us know. If you are someone who works on a regular basis with networking, this is not the class for you. This would be for your real entry-level types of engineers. Ron, I do not see any questions in the chat window. So I think we can go ahead and adjourn. Folks, thank you for joining. Ron, thanks for the information. Excellent stuff. Exciting technology. And folks, we will, as we say, we will be sending out the recording link. Feel free to pass on to any others in your organization. Stay tuned for our next Tech Talk. But until then, everyone have a great April Fool's Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Pat, thanks for hosting, and everybody, thanks for listening to me for 30 minutes. I appreciate it.
Very good.